And I did want to mention again I don't know, it just cracks me up, not like in a ha-ha way, but how the text describes that whenever Diane or Diana comes along, Dinah, whenever she comes along, it's like, and then they had Dinah. Okay, on with the story. She literally gets a line, and all the other boys get all this information about them, their name and what they mean and the whole bit. Okay, so chapter 31. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all his wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. And so the Lord, and just kind of a heads up here, you may not have this curiosity, but I do in almost every paragraph. Whenever it says Lord, it's the times I've looked, it's always Yahweh. And kind of a different side of Yahweh is also Adonai. And then the times it says God, it's almost always Elohim. So for whatever that's curiosity to you, as we read through this, Lord is Yahweh and God is almost always Elohim. As opposed to Theos, it's almost always Elohim. So Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude was different toward him. Then the Lord, or Yahweh, said to Jacob, go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you. So Jacob, and one real quick word about that is, okay, we haven't gotten there yet. So Jacob sent word to Rachel and Leah to come out to the fields where his flocks were, and he said to them, I see that your father's attitude toward me is not what it was before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know what I've worked for your father with all my strength. Your father has cheated me by changing my wages 10 times. However, God has not allowed him to harm me. If he said the speckled ones will be your wages, then all the flocks gave birth to speckled ones. And if he said the streaked ones will be your wages, then all the flocks bore streaked young. So God has taken away your father's livestock and has given them to me. In breeding season, I once had a dream in which I looked up and saw the male goats mating with the flocks that were streaked, speckled, or spotted. And so the angel of God, and this is the Malach of Elohim, and Malach is the Hebrew word for angel, whereas Greek is angelos, and they decide to translate them both, Malach and angelos, as angel, but they both mean messenger, as we looked at a couple of months ago. So the messenger of God said to me in a dream, Jacob, and I said, here I am. He said, look up and see that all the male goats mating with the flock are streaked, speckled, or spotted. For I have seen all that Laban has been doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and where you made a vow to me. Now leave this land at once and go back to your native land. Then Rachel and Leah replied, do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So do whatever God has told you to do. And so Jacob put his children and his wives on camels. He drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with the goods that he had accumulated and paid in Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep, Rachel stole her father's household god. Moreover, Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him that he was running away. And so he fled with all that he had and crossed the Euphrates River and headed for the hill country of Gilead. So as we look through what Jacob did in terms of the poplar tree and taking off the bark and all of those things, it's interesting to kind of parallel that to, or put that next to, this information, that it seems as though Jacob did all this stuff, But how was he being blessed? How was this process actually happening? Is Elohim. God did this. God noticed what Laban was doing, and so God blessed him with all of these flocks and all of this cattle. He blessed him with all of this stuff. So it's interesting to me as you look earlier at all the science that Jacob put into this, but at the end of the day, both through a dream and just outright, God took care of it. God blessed all of this stuff. And also interesting is what Rachel and Leah say to Jacob. And you have to wonder, why would they ask this question to Jacob? Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So what are they actually saying to Jacob here? What is their point? Or a couple of points, actually, that they say to him. So they are leaving, or at least Jacob is telling them, we're going to leave. So because we're leaving our father, we're leaving our family, we're leaving our homeland, what do we get? Where's our money? Notice how he specifically says, does he not regard us as foreigners? So at that time, what were the family units like? You didn't leave your family. And in fact, even here in this country, 70 years ago, before we went industrial, you had farms. Do you remember the Walton Family, that show? It was odd that John Boy went to college, because you stay and you work the land and you help the dad, and the grandparents lived in the same house, and et cetera, et cetera. It was this very, very normal thing. You stay on the land, you work the land, generations on the land, the whole bit. But Rachel and Leah are about to leave, and where are they going to go? To Jacob's father's land in Canaan. And if you remember the map that we looked at with Rachel and Leah and the kids, no idea how old they are, because as we have learned, you can go from within 5 verses and advance about 40 years. So we don't know how old these boys are. But at this time, Joseph has already been born. So Reuben would have to be however old he would be. I think we talked about a number, and I don't remember what that number was, but Joseph is number 12. And so obviously at least 12 years older, if not more. So Reuben could have been at least 20 by now. So you have these 12 boys plus Dinah, as well as the cattle, all their stuff, all the things that they carry. And they are fixing to leave Padan Aram up in the north and go down to Canaan in that area where Jacob is. So you're talking, 6 months, maybe? However many of you guys remember that map that I put up. It is a long trip from Padan Aram down to Canaan. All that stuff that they have to carry, they are leaving their home. So I go into all that because do we have any share in our father's inheritance, especially as women? How are we going to take care of our kids? How are we going to take care of ourselves? We're leaving our father. And again, I process all that because today, oftentimes in our culture today, a woman may leave her mom and dad at 17 and go to college and get a job and get an apartment and start making her own life. But in these times, what was a woman's protection? It's either her dad or her husband. Could be her brother. So she's leaving her dad, her protection, to go with Jacob and all these sons, do we have a share in anything? What is ours of our father's estate? Does he regard us as foreigners? So how are foreigners regarded? They didn't have any estate. They didn't have anything, no connection to anything. Are we now foreigners? Not only has he, verse 14, not only has he sold us. Now, I haven't looked at that word in the Hebrew, but I assume it might be the same thing as our word sold. What does that tell you about their thinking of what Laban did with them, to them? Literally sold him. Yeah, like a herd. So you work for me, and I'll give you my daughter. I'm selling you one for the other. Not only has he sold us, but what else did he do? He has already used what he was paid for us. Surely all the wealth that God took away from our father belongs to us and our children. So, the end result is their response to Jacob that he needs to get out of there because, now one of the reasons we're going through all this is there's a lot happening here in these 6 verses. Jacob says, your dad is not responding to me like he used to. God came to me and said, get out of there. So we're going to leave. And Leah and Rachel both, verse 14, ultimately verse 16, say, whatever your Elohim has told you, do it. Let's get out of here. Again, that word God there is Elohim. So Jacob, verse 17, put his children and his wives on camels. And he drove all his livestock ahead of him, along with all the goods that he had accumulated and paid in Aram, to go to his father Isaac in the land of Canaan. Now, if you don't remember the map or you haven't been here for these classes, I encourage you to go online and just do Canaan to Padan Aram and see the distance. I mean, I don't know in terms of mileage. It may be like going from, I don't know, here to South Salt Lake. And I say South Salt Lake because how many of you guys have ever driven to Salt Lake and you get to Ogden and you're like, yes! No. You got another hour and a half before. And if you're going to go to South Salt Lake, you got another at least 2, maybe more. So the point is that imagine walking to southern Salt Lake City from here. So they got a long way to go. Yes. I am not going to get distracted by a discussion about driving. I'm just saying that out loud. So verse for those of you visiting, there's a little inside joke there because I do have issues with driving. So there's that. Okay, verse 19. When Laban had gone to shear his sheep. Now, when we get to verse 19, there is some background here that is very important. He went to shear his sheep. Rachel stole his household god. And then Jacob deceived Laban, the Aramean, by not telling him he'd run away. So how did Laban not know that Jacob had taken off? I mean, why couldn't he have seen him? So what did we learn earlier? There's a 3-day distance. Laban had put a 3-day distance between himself, his stuff, and Jacob's stuff. So 3 days of walking, yes, are between these men. And then after Jacob takes off, how long does Laban go after him? 7 days is this journey that he goes after him. And I doubt that it's this, just strolling along, chilling stuff. Now, it probably wasn't as fast as Pharaoh went after the Israelite people whenever they left Egypt. But he's probably picking up the pace. 7 days that he uses to go after him. So he takes off after him. On the third day, Laban figured out that he left. Verse 23, he pursued Jacob for 7 days and caught up with him in the hill country. And then again, Elohim came to Laban, the Aramean, in a dream at night and said to him, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And I know we talked about this last week, but how interesting it is when you look at Laban, Pharaoh in Genesis 12, I think, 12 or 13, and then Abimelech in 15 or 16 of Genesis. And you have these men that are not Yahweh Elohim followers, or at least not reverent to them, not honoring them, and yet God enters their brain, enters their dream with this information. Says, Jacob's my guy, don't touch him. And by saying don't say anything to him, don't touch him. I know you want to kill him, don't mess with him. So how does Laban respond to God's dream? And we haven't gotten there yet, I know, but he says, look, man, I want to tear your head off. But your Elohim came to my brain, gave me this dream. I'm not going to touch you, but I'm not happy because I wasn't able to say goodbye to my daughters or my grandchildren. You took all my stuff. I'm not a happy man. Yes, but that's not what Laban says. Jacob took his stuff, and he was like, hey, what's going on here? The last sentence in verse 28, by doing this, you have done a very foolish thing. Now, we talked about this last Sunday, that did Jacob do a wise thing by taking off with the cover of night, by just taking off, as opposed to going to Laban and saying, hey, should we fist pump here? And I'm taking my stuff and take care. Because, you're going to do the right thing and let me go, right? Yes. And
Laban was upset because he didn't get to convince him to stay again.
Right. So I want you guys to process this, the fact that it's like, oh, come on, Jacob, why didn't you go back to Laban and, hey, let's break bread and make this a big feast, and then I'm going to take off. What is Laban probably going to do? The same thing he did the other 3 times. So you have 2 people here who are deceptive. They're manipulators. They use people. And in fact, Jacob's own name, and if I will stop camping out at certain points and we can get there, we'll find something very interesting when Jacob wrestles with this man. So I'm glad we got to that point because we need to move on. So verse 44, sometimes I like to comb through this stuff, and I don't have an hour. So verse 44. 43, beginning of a paragraph, great place. So Laban answered Jacob, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, the flocks are my flocks, all you see is mine. Yet what can I do today about these 3 daughters of mine, or about the children that they have borne? Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it serve as a witness between us. So Jacob took a stone, set it up at a pillar, and he said to his relatives, gather some stones. So they took stones, piled it up in a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it that name. Jacob called it that name. This heap is a witness between you and me. That is why it is called Gilead. It was also called Mizpah because he said, may the Lord, and that place is Yahweh, may Yahweh keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other. If you mistreat my daughters, and if you take any wives besides my daughters, even though no one is with us, remember that Elohim is a witness between you and me. So Laban also said to Jacob, here is this heap, here is this pillar that I have set up between you and me. This heap is a witness, and so he essentially says the same thing. Now notice here, interesting, Laban says this, may the Elohim of Abraham and the Elohim of Nahor and the Elohim of their father judge between us. So may our Elohims judge between us that we're both going to keep our word. You're going to take care of my daughters and my grandkids, and we're both going to be taken care of. Now, it just kind of went through my mind as I was reading that, how Laban sees this. It's not, you're going to take care of your wife and your kids. You're going to take care of my daughters and my grandkids, as opposed to your wives and your kids. May not be a thing, but I find it interesting how he states and processes that. So chapter 32. So I did write this one note down that I didn't get to. How much time have these men spent together since they have known each other? 20 years. More than 20 years. I mean, think about your life in the past 20 years. And in those experiences, what has been maybe not a huge, but a decent theme in these 20 years? There's been work, there's been kids, there's been deception. A lot of their relationship has been manipulation and deception, and who's going to get the better of the other one. What an interesting relationship there. 20 years that they have known each other. Okay, chapter 32. So Jacob also went on his way, and again here we find the Malach of Elohim, the angels of God, the angels of Elohim met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is the camp of, again, Elohim. And so he named the place Mahanaim. So anything you find interesting there? So you find these angels of God, and they met him, and then what happens?
He has to tell him it's God's camp.
Right, and so the word that word means two camps. So maybe this is just something that's curious to me. What happens at the beginning of chapter 2? Chapter 2, verse 2. He sees them. These two angels that show up, these two messengers of God, messengers of Elohim, and Jacob sees them. Does that remind you of any other time when you have angels that a character of God sees? And the reason I ask that is because it's a very curious place for me. Genesis chapter 18, Abraham and Sarah, they're chilling, doing their thing, and then these three visitors approach Abraham, and this is before the whole Sodom and Gomorrah thing. And he sees them, and when he sees these angels, and turns out one of them is Yahweh, one of them is God, he sees them and he runs to them and he says, hey, come and let me take care of you. Let me fix food for you. Let's visit together. And so Abraham, not until much later does he know they're angels. They're angels in physical form because they eat food. And one of them is Yahweh. We find out later in the story. So here, somewhat similar, how does Jacob see these things? Because they're messengers. But they're physical form, obviously. Sees them as people. And does that remind you of anything? Now again, this is how my mind turns. Remember in Hebrews, whenever it talks about serving people that you might be entertaining angels unaware. No, we're not going to go into that. But curious that here we find Jacob, he sees these angels. And when he saw them, he said, this is the camp of Elohim. And so he named the place two camps. We're going to find out in a little bit that two camps because he has two camps. And he's ultimately going to have about four with meeting up with Esau. So Jacob sent messengers ahead of him toward his brother Esau, and he instructed them, this is what you are to say to my lord Esau. My servant Jacob says, I have been staying with Laban and have remained there till now. I have cattle and donkey and sheep and goats and male and female servants. Got a lot of stuff. And I'm sending this message to my Lord that I may find favor in your eyes. Now, another curious thing here is when you go back to Genesis chapter 27 and verse 41. When was the last time that Jacob had seen Esau? You remember what the circumstances was? Yeah, he deceived him. So let's just name the day Tuesday. He deceives him on Tuesday. They go through that whole thing. And what is Esau about to do to Jacob? He's going to... No, in Genesis 27. He's going to kill him. I mean, it's a Cain and Abel thing. He's like, I'm going to find him, and I'm literally going to break his neck. Now, did he have some kind of certification, reasoning to do that? Yeah, big time. And I don't think we have any way of processing what Jacob did to Esau. How bad that was, like really, really bad. So Jacob is about to go find, Esau's about to go find Jacob and kill him. So do you remember what then happens? Rebecca says, hey, you need to get out of here, like now. Because Esau's coming after you, he's going to kill you. So go to, where does he send him? Padan. My brother's there, all his people are there. Get out of here, go there. So it's interesting how two things here are happening where he's leaving because Esau is going to come after him to kill him because of the deception. But then Isaac says, hey, if you're going to look for a wife, don't look for one around here. I don't like these people. Go to Padan, go where your uncle is, find a wife there. So two things are kind of happening here. So as he takes off there, when was the last time that he saw Esau? Until here. Esau was coming after him, hates him, he's going to kill him, his older brother, and for good reason. So with all that in the background here, Jacob sends stuff ahead to Esau. And what is his message? Man, I got stuff. What do you want? My lord Esau, what do you want? I'll give you anything. So not only does he do that, but when the messengers returned to Jacob, verse 6, they said, we went to your brother Esau. Now he's coming to meet you with what? 400 men. So in great distress, Jacob divided the people who were with him into two groups, and the flocks and herds and camels as well. He thought if he comes and attacks one group, then the group that is left may escape. So Jacob prayed, O God of my father Abraham, God of Isaac, Yahweh, you who said to me, go back to your country, your relatives, and I will make you prosper. I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness that you have shown your servant. I have only my staff when I cross this Jordan. Now I have become two camps. Now I have this wealth. So save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid that he will come and attack me. So just an FYI, we're going to have to finish this on the 22nd. Because there's some really, really cool stuff coming. So he spends the night there. So in other words, he sends this group out, spends the night, and then they're going to come back and share what happened. So he spends the night there, verse 18. And from what he had with him, he selected a gift for his brother Esau. And then it shares the gift here. So he says, go ahead of me and keep some space between the herds. He instructed one in the lead. When my brother Esau meets you and asks you, Who do you belong to and where are you going? Who owns all these animals in front of you? Then you are to say to him, this belongs to your servant Jacob. They are a gift sent from my lord Esau, sent to my lord Esau, and he is coming behind us. He also instructed the second, the third, and others following the herds. You were to say the same thing to Esau. So what does Jacob ultimately do? He sends the first wave, my lord Esau. I got all this stuff, what do you want? Spends the night and then sends another group, same thing, my lord Esau. This is all Jacob's stuff. He is your servant. What do you want? And then he sends another one and another one and another one to hopefully try and soften this blow. So then we get to the evening as... Oh, yeah.
No, it is interesting. You know, we've got this scene where Jacob is Esau. He gets the inheritance, basically the portion.
Yes.
Now, if you have the double portion is not that much,
Right.
It's 2/13 versus 1/13. That's what the double portion would be. But when there's only two children,
Yeah.
2/13 is 67%. It's math. 67% of the inheritance. I mean,
Yeah.
Jacob got a lot of stuff
Yeah.
from Isaac, right? And so here, I think what you're seeing is amends, maybe?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
To give back what he
Yeah.
essentially stole from.
Yeah. Very much so. Very much so. Yeah.
Even after all the years, 20 odd more, whatever years, Jacob realizes that he had done a terrible thing, and they don't forget. If you think about the Middle East today,
Yeah.
they don't forget from generation to generation.
Yeah. It's not like, 10 years will take care of stuff. This is like 3 generations will. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah.
One thing we can't forget is they're twins.
Yeah. Good point.
Twins.
Yeah.
Knows what the closeness of what he would want. And he
Yeah.
didn't get it.
Yeah. And we'll get into verse 22 here on the 20. Oh, that's cool. I know nobody cares about it, but we'll get into verse 22 on the 22nd. Come on now. That's cool. Yeah, Carol.
Thinking that Jacob and Esau both knew that by getting the inheritance from Isaac, they also got blessings from God.
Yeah.
Because it seems to imply that God blesses the one that gets the inheritance.
Yeah.
I'm not aware that
Yeah.
Esau knew that, but I assumed.
Yeah. And at whatever level that I've looked at this, there's a lot to that. A lot to that idea on its own that we have a hard time wrapping our mind around. But for them, there's a lot of reasons why Esau was so upset. It wasn't just that he got deceived, but it was what was taken away from him and how it was taken away. And did he know that it wasn't just Rachel that helped, but it was Rachel that conceived the whole idea? It's like, look, this is what we're going to do. And in fact, I was reading through it, walking through this class, and Rebecca, there's a time when Jacob goes into Isaac, and Isaac says, I hear Jacob's voice, but I feel and smell Esau. So Isaac is like, what's going on here? I feel like something's happening that's supposed to be happening, which was true. But then as Jacob brings in the I don't know, porridge stew, whatever you call it, and he's like, oh, the smell of game, this is for sure Esau, this is all great. And then he gives it to him, and then once the blessing is given, which apparently it's like signing a document for us once it's signed, once the blessing is verbally given, and then Isaac realized what had happened, and Isaac's like, somebody go get me Jacob, I'm going to tear him apart. No. Esau says, I'm going to. And so Rebecca's like, you need to get out of here. But not like a couple of miles. You need to put, like 3 months distance between you and your brother. Because now, how Esau didn't know that he went up to Padan Aram to Laban and track him up there, I don't know. It's a question I just thought of, and I don't know how that's the case. And it does seem too, to kind of close it up today, and we'll hit 22 on the 22nd and look into that interesting story. If you remember, Laban's name means white, but the white idea is not white like pure, but it's white like empty. Now, I don't know what that means, because he's obviously a good businessman. And to watch this relationship between Laban and Jacob for 20 years, manipulating and going back and forth between each other. Very, 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 very interesting stuff. And still referring to, as they're doing this manipulating, still referring to, may the Elohim of Abraham, may the Elohim of Jacob, may your Elohim bless you, and may he bless me. So I'm going to manipulate the snot out of you, and I still want my Elohim to bless me and to take care of me and blah, blah, blah. Really, really interesting stuff. So any other comments to close? All right, just to make sure I said it, next Sunday, no classes. We'll have our youth rally weekend, and then we'll be back together on the 20th. At 10:30. Yes, at 10:30. Yeah, at 10:30. Yeah. Sometimes I give too much of my own emotional information. So yes, at 10:30. So let's close with a prayer before I say any more. Living God, we thank you. We love you. We pray that you would walk with us. Father, may we be honest in our honoring of you.